Calvin,
Jeff.
we're here talking to you guys today about
I forgot already.
tells.
Yes.
We're going to talk to you guys about tells. Since over the past 2 weeks we've been talking to you about play styles, it's very important that we talk about tells because they can often help you determine what your play style should be. So first we'll explain what they are. What are tells, Jeffrey?
Alright, well, tells can take a lot of different forms. For example, the most obvious form is when your opponent draws 5 cards and then they do a big sigh and then they throw their hand down and they say poop or something like that. That means probably that they have a bad hand. That's a tell. That's a really obvious tell. Something that's not very hard to pick out. Another kind of tell is when they're shuffling their deck, they drop 5 cards and it's like Evil Swarm, Caster, Pandemic, and you're like, oh, that's a tell, I know what they're playing now. It can pretty much be anything that your opponent tells you that gives you more knowledge than you could be without. So, if you are straight-faced, you shuffle your deck, you hand it to them, you don't tell them anything, that's probably the best, because if your opponent doesn't have any knowledge, they don't know how to do their first turn. Stuff like that.
Some more uncommon tells that are important at larger tournaments where people won't be making those simple mistakes, dropping cards, giving obvious tells as to what their beginning hand looks like. Look at your opponent's life point sheet if they're writing it all in the same one. Look at the numbers that appear consistently. If you see lots of hits for 2400, you know they could be playing Megalos. If you see 224s in a row, probably playing Megalos, that means they're playing Waters. If you see 26s, you can fairly accurately say that they're probably playing Dragons.
If you see a ton of 50s, they're playing Evil Swarms, stuff like that. And they can also, when they have a bunch of back row, and you activate a spell, and if they think about it for a couple seconds, they probably have a judgment, because not many things can stop spells. Stuff like that.
So when your opponent has 2 back row, if you normal summon a monster, they look at their back row for a second and say, okay, that's good. And then you proceed to attack and they respond with a Dimensional Prison. It's safe to assume that that monster could have been hit by whatever their other back row was when you summoned it. So if your monster had more than 1500 attack, could be a bottomless, could be a warning, all things that you should consider, and then using all those different tells that your opponent gives you, you compile knowledge to make reads. Some people are better at this than others, and if you are good at this, if this is a skill that you naturally have, then your playstyle is going to be more aggressive. You're going to be able to push in more and make riskier plays based on those tells. And if it's not something that comes naturally to you, it's still something that you have to develop, because it's going to be very difficult to succeed at any large-scale tournament or in any competitive play if you're unable to take these tells and make reads based on them.
And a really important thing is giving false tells to your opponent. If you have a lot of back row and you know they have the MST, one of my favorite moves is to think about each play and look at one of your back rows that's really insignificant at the time, and just whenever they do something, just think about it for a second, look at that one back row, flip it up a couple times, don't mention anything about it. They'll probably, if they blind MST, they'll probably hit that one. It works 90% of the time. It's really subtle, and it's mostly subconscious, so it kind of gets them.
Right, when you're looking at your back rows, lots of people, when they look at their back row, they flip every single one of them up, and what I do is I like to look at the chainable ones last. So I'll look at my warnings and things first, my chainable ones last, and that's the last thing my opponent sees. So even if they don't consciously realize that they're doing it, their brain is recognizing that that card is a threat. So they'll see that card move up and down, and even if they don't notice it, it's still registering with them. So pay attention to your opponent's tells. Give false tells to your opponent, because chances are they'll be looking for them. And just go into every match over-prepared.
Yeah, the more knowledge you have, the more likely you are to win. So just try to find out as many things as you can before the duel starts, and then you can make the best plays, especially game 1 when you don't know what they're playing.
Alright, Calvin and Jeff.
Peace.